Hi, welcome to our podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and with me, of course, is Tom Spitali. And we keep our eye on interesting things that, as humans, we typically would see out in the world. And then we go, how does that apply to what our customers are dealing with in the B2B world? So, long way of saying $7 Dorito bag of chips. It was like when we looked at that, we were like, whoa. And it was just so over the top. And, that we thought this would be a very interesting topic because we teach pricing and we talk about the fact that there is a ceiling on pricing, but we hadn't really seen a company really hit it as hard as Doritos did and Frito-Lay and PepsiCo, all that conglomerate. And so, as we typically do, we look at the fact that there is price sensitivity. PepsiCo thought that they could continue to raise prices. They raised it over 50% over the last couple of years because they were a strong brand. They had the top market share. And what that created was a blind spot. All of their partners, if you will, in the chain were saying, whoa, this is too much. And then they started substituting the Doritos for their private labels because it was just too much for their customers. And even with that dialogue happening, they still raised the price more. So it was just, it was definitely something that a lot of warning signs were there, and it was a blind spot. So, if you were to work on a drill bit, in oil and gas, there are similarities to this that hopefully you're going to take from some of the things that we talk about um, because it's crazy. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about what you think?
Well, Mary, do you have any of the in front of you any of the financial impacts? I know it was like a huge, like it was they
Over a
lost
billion dollar loss. Yeah.
Doritos, which is, it's like a staple of snack food. Yeah, well, what happened here? You do have a really, I mean, iconic brand, and something that I think in the past people have been, and I think still are willing to pay a premium for over store private label brands. But we had a situation here where I think Frito-Lay lost sight of their reference set, meaning, you know, even though there's a premium that people will pay for certain brands, a lot of people, certain segments of people will pay for brand names. There gets to a point where it seems a little bit ridiculous, where people ask themselves, is it really worth this much? You know, and on our price value kind of matrix where we, on the y-axis we put price, on the x-axis we put the value that a brand is delivering to customers. There's this relationship between the two. Like people will pay a price that they think is equivalent to the value that they're getting, but what messes that up is the competitive reference set. So you might think as a brand, you've got that right, nailed. You have that price point right at the right spot. But if there is a bunch of competitors that are, underpricing, maybe able to make profit, willing to forgo profit for volume, at some point that gets out of balance. And I think that's what happened here to Doritos. They kept raising the price. They felt like they had the value to do it. But not only the store brand Doritos, were kind of undercutting them, but people think there's other snack foods, So this is where the idea of indirect competitors come in. It doesn't have to be a Mexican style chip. People want something salty, something crunchy, and maybe they started substituting, other things that they thought could give them, satisfy that same craving because the price got out of whack. That's what I think happened there.
Yeah, I really like your point about reference set. And sometimes we don't even realize what the reference set is. Is it other chips? Is it other salty things? Is it, so for customers that we work with, sometimes that's one of the biggest questions that we ask when they say, oh, I have a, excuse me,
Bless you.
I get all choked up with this question. They say, I have a pricing problem. And we go, do you really have a pricing problem? And then we step back and we say, have you created the value? And then have you communicated? A lot of times companies create the value, but then they aren't good at communicating it. And in that equation of create is relative to what else the customers can buy. As Tom's saying, is the reference set. And sometimes indirect competitors actually are a really good option for customers once once you push them too far with price in this case. One of my favorite ways to ask about pricing is to say, at what price is this expensive, but you would still consider it? And then at what price is this so expensive that you would walk away? And then conversely, at what price would be a low price? And then at what price would it be so low that you would question the value and the quality?
But for your first question, it's $7 for
Yeah, yeah,
Doritos.
yeah,
It's what price is too high? Clearly,
yeah. $6. $6 is too
six nine.
high.
Well, 6.99, right? I mean,
Yeah. And those, too high questions, too low questions at least give you a sandbox to understand. And, there's a lot more sophisticated tools that can be used to measure price sensitivity. But if you're so far out of the ballpark, you're going to be testing something that doesn't even make sense. Can we go up to $9? No, probably not. And then, of course, when you pull it back into strategy, as Tom's saying, we look at the price relative to value with a PVA. And if there is a disconnect, it really does help to say, do I need to pull back on some of the value? Can I lower the price by lowering or at least maintaining the price by pulling some things away that aren't as important? Or if I have to raise the price, is there a segment of customers that are willing to pay that? Or have I even priced myself out of that a niche that I might be going after? So I think pricing is very interesting. It's very dynamic. But when your own customers, as Walmart and other customers were telling Dorito people, hey, this is so far over bounds. You don't even need to do a pricing study. Your customers are telling you there's not enough value for the price that you're charging.
I think too, you said, Mary, sophisticated, you use the word sophisticated, and I think sometimes in terms of, analyzing your price, and I think sometimes people can overcomplicate the issue. Frito-Lay has a sales force in grocery stores across this world every single day. They're not in every store every day, but I mean, every day, they're in there, merchandising, checking stock levels, etc. Strategically, why couldn't Frito-Lay have created this reference set? All right. Like, so who is the comparison set? And for, a couple of weeks out of every quarter, you could have these people report back what's the retail price of Doritos and what's the retail price of the reference set, and understanding the relationships between those two, because clearly Doritos is a brand that's strong enough to charge a premium price to store brands and maybe even other reference set types of salty snack products. But there is a point where the relationship gets out of whack. They know that now. They know where that point is now. If they can understand the fine balance between the reference set and the price that they charge, and know that that sets sort of a upper bound for them, at least in this current world, that information is simple and easy to collect. And it doesn't require calculus and all kinds of sophisticated data collection and models. It's something that can be gathered quick and easy, and it can allow them to make avoid the mistake that they made of overpricing that.
Yeah, and moving to the world that we typically play in, which is the B2B world, if you think about it, there's a lot of technology with AI that's being developed. Let's say you're making a drill bit. How do you know what you're going to charge someone? That's not an everyday sell, but every 3 to 5 year sell when you make it. but how do you make sure that you aren't, creating that $7 bag of Doritos? How do you somehow gauge that and understanding the value that you're providing by let's say if you have that drill bit that has special technology, are you replacing certain, a couple of other devices that are required? So the relevant set is how did the customer achieve that job before, and then what am I collectively being able to help not only replace, but there may be benefits to the job's cost overall, or the timing, you can do it faster. So what is that worth to the customer? That's where you get back into that value question as you're trying to go price value. Same thing with medical devices. We see it all the time with them. How do we, to save someone's life is probably worth a whole lot, but at some point there is an upper limit. So how do you measure that relative to what else, a hospital might be able to purchase for that same solution? So
Well, when we say to people that the price, people are willing to pay a price that's equivalent to the value that they are receiving, everybody agrees with that. The question they always have is, but how do you measure value? Isn't that impossible? And this is something that we found over our 2 decades and more of working together is absolutely definable, quantifiable even. Now, it might not be exactly quantifiable, but the idea is you just need to do a little bit of research around what's the decision criteria that people make and how do they ascribe weights to that decision-making criteria, and how do they evaluate your ability and your reference set of competitors' ability to deliver on those things. You can make a number. You can create a quantifiable value score if you work at it and have some discipline. That's invaluable in pricing because that is the point where you say, well, on a 1 to 1,000 scale, I might be delivering 750 points of value at a premium price, and my competitor might be delivering 250 points of value, but their price is so much lower than ours that customers almost say, "Well, look, this is such a great deal, I can't pass it up." You start to get the sense for what's that relative difference between competitors and indirect competitors, and you can start to understand when that relationship is getting out of balance, and what corrective actions to take to get it back into balance.
yeah, and to avoid the blind spot. I mean, really, that this case is clearly about Doritos and company, having a blind spot and just, every costs are going up across the board, and inflation is real. So it's normal for a lot of our clients to be raising the price, but as Tom's describing, is how do you do that in a systematic way so that you don't have a blind spot and you're very conscious of the trade-off that your customers are making as you're raising the price, is that pushing some customers to move to another option? So anyway, we hope that next time you're in the grocery store, you might look around and see different things and go, I wonder if I need to think about my company's products and pricing in a different way as well. So good luck.
I still love Doritos.